these kind of monies we're looking for are getting put into that state budget. They're going to be our best hope of making sure that those monies are there. So when the claim comes in, the controller says, you know, oh, I can pay this.
But what you keep looking for is a continuing appropriation like you do in some accounts, so it's not subject to this annual budget process.
Right, but it still needs to be in the budget because the state controller can only write a check if there's a corresponding appropriation.
Right.
So,
And it's not depleted.
Right.
And it's not depleted, like the prison reimbursement function.
Yeah, right.
And I think the passage of Prop 1A a few years ago, I think it gives us a little more security that they're not gonna pull the rug out
Exactly.
from under us.
I would-
But it's not 100%.
It's not 100%,
We've
but
seen
I
it.
can say,
My crystal ball.
talking with the Plymouth suits that were at the LAFCO conference last week, that they're struggling right now over in Quincy because they've got that homicide trial going. It's a big trial with the guy that was shooting,
Mr. Wallen Reed.
which killed the one kid in the car
Yeah.
up in Antelope Lake a year or so ago. So they, I mean, those are, you know, those big homicide type trials can really create havoc for a small rural county like this.
Yes, they can.
Well,
They can.
I didn't mean to interrupt on that, but I
But
think it's
as
an
a-
important point, how we take a look at the revenue side of this.
So on page 11, page 11 is where of the revenues, we have your district attorney revenues
Right.
identified under Fund 130, and there's a whole bunch of different lines. So we don't have
Not
any,
this one.
we don't have any corresponding revenue. The revenue that's in here is, like Marty pointed out, was past year's reimbursements that have been,
Right. But they're in Fund 100.
is it in the front, in the...
They're in Fund 100 on the
Right.
revenue side.
Yeah.
And so theoretically, somehow, you've got to be able to plug that in. In other words, I don't think that the $1,700,000.
This is a simpler way to put all this together. I was Larry. Trying to jump
Well-
from here to there, from there to here, and here to there, and there to here, and trying to figure out where the revenue is.
Actually, we're down to, what do we got now, 4 budgets? There was a time when we had 6. So-
No, I think they're talking about the overall, not
They're
yours
talking
necessarily.
about the
Not-
formula.
the
Not
more
necessarily.
global approach, not
Not
you.
necessarily.
No, you're
only
good,
you.
you're good.
Not just you, Bob, I mean, every department.
Trying to reconcile the revenue pages and the
Yes,
detail with the
Right.
expenditure pages and details is what we're
Makes sense.
having the discussion.
Right.
So on page 11 of the revenue tab, which is tab at the beginning, is where the revenues are listed that would
Right.
correspond to
Fund
these
100.
pages that we're looking at here, and that's where there's nothing plugged in here.
Right.
No, it's on, the
Right.
revenue is on page 3, at the bottom.
Okay.
Homicide reimbursement 1213, if you go to revenues, page 3 at the bottom.
So why can't it just be district attorney and all his revenue be
Well,
and all
It
his?
does, it's for other budget units.
Right.
Doesn't,
Public safety is pooled. All the revenue for public safety, which is DA, public defender, sheriff, dispatch, it's a, they are so far short of generating revenue to support their operation that their revenues are pooled. And they're all under the 139,000 budget unit. So in budget unit 9,000, you see the general fund contribution of $5,030,000. You see public safety sales tax, which is,
These on page 3 or under
It's-
100?
it's on,
Page 3 of the second.
Excuse me for a minute, I'm gonna get a drink of water while you work that out.
the general fund miscellaneous, or, excuse me, public safety miscellaneous, is on page 13. Fund number 139,000.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at earlier.
right,
So the one on page 3 is the prior year, that's that 152,000 we were talking about.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
right.
Thank you, Bob.
Trying to think of where I left off.
Which Bob?
And so, yeah, that's in essence the homicides budget. That was one that, we had initially been bearing some costs in the criminal division budget, but ultimately at the suggestion of the budget committee was segregated to a different budget fund and budget unit entitled homicides. And that's what you're seeing now. And so, that's the essence of it.
Well, I appreciate your carving it out separately,
well, it wasn't I who did, I mean, it was the budget committee that came up with the idea, the suggestion. I think maybe even the board in general, when the specter of this and it being a long-term case
Right.
came up,
Right.
I want to say a year and a half or two. Yeah, the budget committee did. And
So,
so,
previous budget committee.
I don't I didn't have any hand in it.
Right.
Thank you, I appreciate that, but I didn't.
Back to Julie, you said on page 13, I'm trying to find the
Yeah.
line item. You said it's
It's up there, 13.9.
Fund 130. Okay, right. Now, which one is that, and we don't have any money budgeted in it? The homicide, this would be under, on page 3, you had the money there for prior year, but you said on page 13, and which line item is the DA?
The 152 is in the general fund, it hasn't been transferred to
Right.
public safety.
Okay, that's the one that's on page
Page 3.
3. Okay, on page 13, you said there was, now what line item? I'm looking at the line item, so which one is, I don't see DA, so which one are we?
It's pooled with the general fund contribution,
Right.
the
$5
$5,030,000.
million.
Okay, that's the line, I just need to make me a little note on the side here.
Can I add one more thing about?
That's where the 152 got transferred from
See,
page 3 to here.
139,000, see.
Yeah, it's lumped in with that.
Right, I just want to make a note of
Okay.
it. so I can-
Karen has
I
one
said
more.
I'd point out the exceptions. The line here, the public safety, or the sales tax, city share,
Yes.
82,000. So that's, Lassen County receives 5% of the sales tax received by the city. And the practice has been, for as long as I've been around, is to apply that 5% to public safety. But it doesn't have to be, that's discretionary to the
When
board.
was that recommendation decided?
It was since.
That was an early.
Maybe for that 1 year, that was maybe what the board decided to do, but I don't recall
know
that
what?
being
It's-
made permanent.
It's been in the budget like that for as.
Remember, we were trying to
long as-
rewrite the tax sharing agreement when SBI was gonna use it.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, the 5% thing got negotiated back in the
Oh,
late
gosh.
90s when Bixby was there. I
Well, that
was,
was Walmart.
I
yeah,
suspect we,
dealing with all the Walmart,
Robin.
Safeway, and
Robin,
Starbucks
right.
and that. yeah.
I suspect it's been in the budget like that
But I
since,
think
And that's
since
good.
the 90s. So just an FYI, you can do it to will.
So that's,
All right.
that 5% is included in this 5
the
million
hearings
here?
were getting closer and closer.
No, there's a separate line, that 82,000, on I think your page 13.
Under the other
Fund
130.
130.
Okay, so
unit.
that's the 5% sales tax
That's
that you guys,
The
okay.
city share that we,
Thank you.
Am I allowed chlorine with that, Jim?
Yes, you can. I was actually planning on the diving board with that money.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on then. You have the DA, if you want to discuss the 130.
Yeah, I know this is gonna be part of the budget discussion, and not to put my oar in that water. Euphemism. Hey, my mama didn't know how to swim,
Thank you.
ever, and it shaped our lives.
Really?
Okay, so, and now to the 1300431 fund, which is the criminal division budget, which is the general fund budget for the functions of the district attorney's office, the biggest of all of them for us. And so generally speaking, as I indicated in my opening remarks, I view that as, in essence, 3/4 dedicated to salaries and employee benefits. Those are in essence fixed costs associated with maintaining the status quo of the staff currently in office. There was a little bit of a change in terms of FTE from last year to this, as the cost of employing any particular person increases due to MOUs and the like. And our inability to rely on grants for the same amount of FTE that we did in years past, we shift some small amounts as time goes by to the criminal budget. As I have indicated, my budgeting strategy is to rely on as much as I can by grants and then pick up the remainder with criminal division. In this year's context, that means a .08 FTE increase, which is what, 8/100ths of a full-time employee increase. So we did see some increase in salaries and employee benefits associated with that. And then also in services and supplies, we have, I want to comment for just a moment on services and supplies. There are costs in there that I think it's important you understand what those monies are spent on. Certainly there are some items in services and supplies that we are obliged to pay. The IT direct bill, there are insurance fees, and so there's some, what's the other one? Well, 887. How could I forget that? How could I forget that? And so,
A friend that keeps on giving.
and
We can wipe it out completely.
is that a motion?
I don't make motions.
Let's do it before she changes the line.
And so
That's law disposition.
anyways, my point is that there are costs in there that a lot of folks don't necessarily expect would be borne by the office of the district attorney. For example, there are costs associated with the analysis of evidence, forensic service costs. You know this from past budget years, we are obliged to pay for blood draws at the hospital on DUI arrests or other kinds of arrests where a blood draw is done. That costs us. Who pays for that? So the VA does through their budget. And the hospital doesn't do it for free. They have liabilities issues. As you can well imagine, sticking a needle in someone's arm has certain costs associated with it, certain liabilities associated with it. That's just in the context of blood draws. There is also an
When you
attendant.
do that with the hospital, do they give you the discount rate or do they give you the full rate?
They're generous to us. They are generous to us. They give us a discounted rate, but it's not a walk in the park. Yes. And so, you know, and sometimes it has to do with the administration of the hospital and how magnanimous they're feeling towards local law enforcement. In past years, we received a better rate. You know, now it's more corporately driven, and so we don't receive as good a rate as we maybe had in the past. But still, we don't, I think, pay what non-governmental entities might pay. Let's leave it at that. So there are costs associated with the drawing of blood. There's costs associated with the testing of the blood. We have an obligation to pay the Department of Justice for the testing of that blood because we have to know what's in the blood to be able to establish one way or the other the allegation that the law enforcement agency has made in the case. For example, they arrest someone for being under the influence of narcotics and a blood draw is taken, or they arrest someone for being under the influence of alcohol and driving a motor vehicle and blood is drawn. That is submitted to a forensic lab and we receive a bill for that from the Department of Justice. That's kind of been the exception in terms of the state billing us for forensic services. Historically, the state has not billed us for forensic services, even though we know from discussions at the state level in years past when things got really tight, billing counties for forensic services was definitely on the block. And the funding of crime labs, ours principally being from Reading, was one that was being looked at, you know, and several others across the state. And those who would feel that the most would be the rural counties. A lot of the bigger counties have their own crime labs. Imagine that. They actually have, I think there's a district attorney crime lab in Sacramento. There's a district attorney crime lab in Kern County. It's just,
So we get a better rate from them if we contract with them to do it instead of the state?
it's not the rate, here's the hidden cost. It's not the cost associated with the initial testing, Jim. It's the cost associated with bringing the witness to testify to the result. When the defense says, when Gianotti's office says, no, demand a jury trial because I know it's going to cost you to bring that person, so you're going to make me a better offer. Chess.
Do you?
Try not to. It's easier to bring somebody from Reading in the Department of Justice than it is to bring somebody from Central Valley Toxicology down in Sacramento.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier to bring somebody from Sacramento, somebody from Reading, who the state will pay for their salary even though we paid for the analysis of the blood, as compared to paying for a criminalist from Redwood Toxicology out of Sonoma at about $1,400 a day just to show up. And if it's wintertime, they're going to come the night before, and that's a double. On a charge that will result in probation and mandatory drug treatment with no jail by law. So, moving right along. Oh, yeah, there are more than just the blood draws. I was getting to that. We have from time to time the need to ask the court reporter to prepare a transcript for us in the DA's office. Some are not automatically generated and billed to the court. Some we have a need for. And so we have the obligation to pay for that as well. Court reporters aren't cheap. They bill by the word, literally. And so that's included in there as well.
But if you talk fast enough, they have a hard time getting all the words in, so you get by cheaper.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Everyone.
Yeah.
I love watching the fingers of the court reporter smoke when you're talking.
There are every time that there is a suspected sexual assault, and the individual who is the alleged victim in such a situation is examined, physically examined, and it's a difficult thing at best. They're taken to the hospital, and there's an approved procedure, and the hospital, medically qualified individuals are there to perform the exam and to collect the appropriate specimens, and that's expensive. That's like $1,500 or $2,000 an exam, and who pays for that? Us, through the DA's budget. 2 or 3 of those in a year, and that's that whole line item almost. Or that's a big dent in the line item associated with special departmental expense or professional and specialized services, because that's where that cost comes from. Okay? That doesn't even talk about the analysis of the evidence taken from it. We have an ongoing maintenance agreement, if you will, that we subscribe to each year, an amount about $3,000 that is for the aged computer system that we have. The manufacturers or developers of that software, we pay $3,000 a year to help us maintain it. It's something that I'm sure you see in other departments where you have purchased a software application, and you also have a need to have the developers of it work with you over time to correct issues with it. Those people work with Ms. Handy over at the IT and Mr. Baldwin as well, but that's another $3,000 dent, basically. That doesn't necessarily appear. So those are just some examples of some of the costs that we see in the services and supplies area for the main criminal division budget. That's in a non-extraordinary year. That doesn't talk about Burns going to Sacramento to visit with deputy AGs about McElrath and James. That doesn't talk about going to Yuba City to check out the courthouse, 2 weeks back. It doesn't, I haven't even mentioned those things. I'm probably using a bad example because those are things that we're going to track back to that particular reimbursement program. But there are other cases that come up in the course of even an extraordinary year that require us to pay for things out of special department expense and professional and special services. That is the reason why we included those numbers in the manner in which we did. It's based on some history. It's based on what we have actually spent in years past. And if there's, and God forbid, I hope not, another extraordinary case that occurs between now and the end of this fiscal year that we're in, it could require that we come back and ask for an augmentation, because I can't predict those things. Anyways, I'm happy to answer any questions associated with that budget. Again, it is 6.49 employees FTE in essence. That in conjunction with the other FTEs in the other budgets brings us to 10.5 full-time employees in the office of the district attorney for the county of Lassen. That is, in essence, the prosecution function here. It's fewer people, if I recall correctly, than when I started.
The 6.49 that's in your
Yes, sir.
431 budget unit, how many FTEs for attorneys do you
I'll
have?
tell you exactly. 0.8 of that is me, because 0.20 is billed to prison prosecution. Can you imagine that, part of my time is not dedicated to the prison prosecution area in the county with what we have going with the two institutions? No. So 0.8 for me. I've got 1, 2, 3 full-time deputy district attorneys, well, 1 senior deputy and 2 deputy district attorneys in that fund by way of FTE. I've got 2 legal secretaries, 1's a senior, and I've got essentially 0.69 FTEs for program coordinator. Does that answer your question, sir?
Yes, it does, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? I have one on your space needs, back to your issue with the location of the courthouse and your offices. I guess my question might be more appropriate for Mr. Nichols. Is this something we're working on?
In terms of long-term, no. In terms of trying
We've
to.
talked about it for probably, 2 or 3 years since we knew they were going down there, and Mr. Kettleson was working on it earlier, so it is an issue that's out there, and I agree with Mr. Burns that the inefficiencies which have developed probably need to be addressed at some point in time.
Logically, you would locate, try to locate your criminal justice functions somewhere in juxtaposition to the courthouse, but that's the creation of a separate facility with all the
That's
separate
correct.
costs.
Combination,
We
district
talked-
attorney's office,
Yeah.
probation department,
Yeah.
public defender's office,
And we-
aquatic center.
Go Bob.
And we talked about that, briefly in terms of our long-range capital planning, and I think the direction of the board was to try to maintain most of the offices here as part of the county civic center rather than relocating somewhere else.
When this facility that Bob is advocating there, we can all swim in the red ink.
That was tongue in cheek, please, let's let the record reflect that. That was
Anyway,
just
I
humor.
still think it's something that, yes,
You can swim in the red ink, I
You
like
can swim in the
that.
red.
I'm not the one that's gonna be leading the charge on space needs and so on, but.
Well, I think we have 2 space needs issues. One is long-term, and I agree with you. I think we need to be looking at.
Short term is just open the door over there.
Well, the short term is reallocating and utilizing the space that we have in a physical building that could relieve. And I think that's something that can be done at little or no cost. And I think that's something that maybe Marty can, and we're gonna be hearing from Harry Money here. I
We talked
guess.
about doing a workshop on
Yeah,
that in the next
and
meeting.
if we can get that done in the next month or so, that would be